My name is Cindy and I'm the owner and designer of Sensational Baubles. It's an all-handmade jewelry line that I started about 4 years ago. Today I'm going to show you how to make a dried flower pendant. The first thing that you're going to need are flowers that you've dried, and I prefer the silica gel Dri Splendor. It's quick, easy, and microwavable. It takes 2 minutes to dry them, and then you just let them sit. Make sure that you use a container that you're never going to use again, because once you use it in here, you're not going to be able to eat in it or anything. The next thing that you're going to need is glue. I recommend the Liquid Fusion clear urethane glue, only because it doesn't change the color of the dried flowers when you put them in your pendant. You're going to need wax paper and cardboard, and this is going to protect your cabinets or your countertops. The tools that you're going to need are Popsicle sticks, and that's for mixing your resin. And then you're going to need a couple of tools that you can pick the petals up with and lay them in the pendants, and then make sure that they are aligned. So you'll need some pointer pieces too. The next thing is you're going to need some pendants. I prefer the deeper well pendants only because the majority of the flowers don't dry flat, and you can layer them in there with a nice pretty design. The resin that I recommend is Enviro-tex Lite, and it's really easy to measure, really easy to use, and it dries nice, clear, clean, and hard, usually within 24 hours. The next thing that you're going to need are measuring spoons. I prefer the 1 tablespoon, and you're going to use 1 of each, so you're going to get pretty much a lot of resin when you do it. I'm also going to recommend that you have paper towels or gloves, because when you're using resin, the resin actually gets on your fingers and it's going to make them slick and sticky. And I will also recommend that you do not wear good clothes, because what resin does to your clothes is not pretty. Okay, first things first is you take your glue and you slather it in. Make sure you get all the corners to the pendant, and then put some in the center. And this is going to make sure that all of your petals lay flat as best as possible. Put your glue back up like this, because otherwise it's going to settle back in there and it's going to be a pain. I prefer to use rose petals in the base of it because they're really easy to set in there. Just press it into the edges and the excess comes right off. Easy peasy. Then take one of your tools, press it in. It's okay if it doesn't completely coat, or if you have extra glue, just take it out. Because when you're finished layering them in, you're not going to ever see. Oops. Okay. First. Now, second thing, let's pick a pretty little flower. Let's go with these purple ones. What I like to do is take individual petals and lay them in one at a time. I'm going to put more glue in there. Remember, when you're doing layering, you're going to have to use a lot of this glue. You're barely going to see any of the yellow once we get finished. And yes, you're going to have overlapping on the edge, and that's just fine. Just leave it for now because it's going to be better later. Let's put some blue in there. More glue. Sometimes the best tools you can use are your nails. And the one thing about making jewelry is that you're not going to keep your nails nice and pretty. See? Alright, let's pick a darker color now. And see what I mean about not drying flat? Pick one of these. Take the end off and lay it in here. Let's get a couple more. And lastly, these great little darlings are perfect. They're already pretty much flat, and they're made in the shape of a flower already. So we're going to put that right here in the very edge. So it looks like the petals and the colors are coming out around it. Let's take a couple more pieces, stick them in the crevices, any places you might think need it. And you can use scissors if you want to. Take your other tool, press it down, and once these dry, they are going to end up looking like these. And you can use all kinds of different flowers and all kinds of different settings, and they look like they're little darling little flowers. See what I mean about them being not quite flat? Alright, we are up to the resin. Take your first piece of resin, and again, if you don't have gloves, paper towels are great. Measure an even amount into the tablespoon, pour it into your piece, the lid back on it. This stuff is awful when it spills. Take one of your popsicle sticks and get the residual out. Put it back on the wax paper. Sometimes it gets stuck. And equal amounts. Right in there. As much out as you can. And put this back in the plastic bag so it doesn't drip everywhere. And then you're going to mix your resin. See how it's swirling up? And it's not quite as clear and it's got bubbles. You're going to need to do this for about a minute. So we'll be back in just a... Alright. After about a minute or so of mixing the resin together, you'll see all these wonderful little bubbles. That means it's about ready. So what you do is you take your handy dandy little popsicle stick and drizzle it in onto the pendant, all crevices and areas. You can do this in multiple stages, so don't worry if it doesn't get all the way up high over the petals. The thicker it is, the harder it is to get the bubbles out, and you will need to do that. So it's always better to do it in a couple of different layers. Make sure you get all the way to the edges, because once you get to the edges, if you don't get them the first time, you will not be able to get them the second time. Higher up, you can. Edges, no. So continue doing that. Just drizzle it in. See how it goes in all the little crevices? That's exactly what you want. And for the next 30 minutes, you need to baby the pendants. Usually I do all of my pendants and then I take a lighter. See all the little bubbles in there? You don't want those bubbles in there, and if you don't get them out, they will stay there. Take a lighter, pass it over gently to get the bubbles out. You'll need to do this multiple times because the bubbles will rise from the bottom and come back up. Just don't put it over the same spot too long. Number one, this gets really hot and will burn your finger. And number two, it'll also burn the petals before they're sealed, and it will also make hard spots in your resin. What you will come up with are darling little pendants similar to this that you can make into bracelets, necklaces, earrings, or what have you. And it's completely sealed and protected. And there you have a dried flower pendant.